Paris, October 22nd, 1895. The Gare Montparnasse station bustled with its usual rhythm. Heels clacking against the stone floor, newspaper vendors calling out the day's headlines, and the distant rumble of approaching trains weaving into the city's pulse like background music. To the everyday Parisian, it was just another crisp autumn afternoon. But history had other plans. At precisely 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a steam locomotive, train number 56 from Granville, came thundering into the city, fashionably late and furiously trying to make up for lost time. On board, the engineer Guillaume-Marie Pellerin tightened his grip on the throttle. He had precious minutes to recover, and the company didn't take kindly to delays. Behind him, passengers sipped the final drops of their tea, unaware that they were moments away from becoming unwilling witnesses to one of the most spectacular train accidents ever recorded. No one at the station saw it coming. But seconds later, the sound of history crashing through stone echoed across Paris. Literally. Because when the brakes failed and momentum met gravity, all hell broke loose. What followed was a moment so surreal, so defiant of logic and architecture, that it would be frozen forever in black and white. A locomotive dangling from the sky like a steel nosedive through time itself. It was a train like any other. The Granville-Paris Express, a proud steamer of the Chemin de Fer de Loire Railway Company, connected the sleepy seaside town of Granville with the ever-pulsing heart of France, Paris. It made this journey daily, carrying with it vacationers returning home, businessmen rushing to meetings, and families reuniting with loved ones. By all accounts, it was ordinary. But on October 22nd, 1895, ordinary would not be enough. At the controls was Guillaume-Marie Pellerin, an experienced driver, well-versed in the rhythms of the rails. Alongside him, his firemen poured coal into the belly of the beast, feeding the steam engine that powered their advance. These weren't reckless men, they were professionals driven by duty and an ever-ticking clock. And that clock was running late. You see, delays weren't uncommon. Trains fell behind schedule regularly, but the expectation was always the same: make up for lost time. Passengers didn't want excuses, company managers wanted punctuality, and engineers like Pellerin, they bore the pressure with steel nerves and a tighter grip on the throttle. So when the Granville-Paris Express lagged a few minutes behind on that fateful afternoon, the solution was simple: speed up. It was standard practice. No alarms, no second guessing, but speeding up is one thing. Stopping, that's another story entirely. Chapter 2, the moment of impact. As the train approached Gare Montparnasse, something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Pellerin should have begun slowing the engine well before entering the station. But the train kept barreling forward. 40, 50, nearly 60 kilometers per hour. For a terminal stop, this was unthinkable. The brakes were engaged, or so they thought, but the air brake system had failed. The emergency brakes weren't enough, and the train wasn't stopping. People on the platform turned, at first confused, then terrified. Screams pierced the air as the shriek of metal on metal roared through the hall. The monstrous engine crushed through the buffer stop like it was paper. Then, with horrifying force, it rammed into the stone station wall. But it didn't stop there. The locomotive smashed straight through the facade, tore through masonry, and plunged, nose first, out of the building, crashing into the street below. It was as if time paused in horror. The image was frozen in history. A massive steam engine hanging from the station like a bizarre art installation born of chaos and gravity. Below, debris scattered the pavement. The train's body lay crumpled but intact. Miraculously, almost all of the passengers survived. One unfortunate newspaper vendor on the street was killed by falling debris, the only fatality. But for a moment, Paris held its breath, and the world saw what happens when man's machines outrun their limits. This wasn't just a crash. It was a symbol of speed, of failure, of history breaking through the walls of expectation, quite literally. Chapter 3, hanging by a thread, the iconic image. It looked like a mechanical beast frozen mid-scream. The locomotive didn't just crash, it burst through the station's stone facade, as if determined to escape the bounds of its steel track and forge a new path through air and gravity. The momentum carried it past all safety measures, all logic, and straight out of the second-floor wall of Gare Montparnasse. There it hung, nose first, 30 feet above the pavement, its tail end still lodged inside the station. The heavy engine slammed down onto the busy Place de Rennes below, smashing through the sidewalk and sending up a thick, choking cloud of dust, plaster, and disbelief. Parisians froze. Some screamed. Others stared in silence, unable to grasp the surreal image before them. A train, a real train, dangling out of a building like a child's toy caught in mid-fall. Onlookers gathered, hands over mouths, eyes wide, stunned by the sheer absurdity and violence of the sight. And then came the photograph. Shot in the aftermath, the black and white image captured the moment history stood still. The train jutting from the wall, its wheels suspended like a cliffhanger, smoke coiling into the sky. It became one of the most iconic photos of the 19th century, burned into the collective memory of the modern world. It was dramatic, tragic, and absurd all at once, a symbol of human ambition, miscalculation, and the thin line between control and catastrophe. To this day, it remains a haunting testament to what happens when machinery defies expectation. And gravity answers back. Chapter 4, the human cost. But behind the image, beyond the spectacle, lay real lives. Amid the twisted metal and shattered stone, tragedy had found its mark. On the street below, Marie-Augustine Aguilar was tending to her daily post, selling newspapers beside the station entrance. In an instant, she was crushed beneath falling debris. Her death was senseless, sudden, and the only fatality, but no less devastating. Inside the train, 6 passengers and 2 crew members were injured, tossed about in the wooden carriages as the sudden stop jolted everything and everyone forward. Fireman François Boudet, who was near the engine at the moment of impact, suffered broken ribs and burns, thrown from the locomotive in a violent blur of force. And yet it could have been far worse. Had the platform been more crowded? Had the train been packed? Had the angle of descent been slightly different? The Montparnasse derailment might have gone down not as a bizarre accident, but as a mass casualty disaster. Instead, it became a chilling near-miss, a story where tragedy met spectacle, and where one woman's life became the price paid for a mistake that could have been so much more devastating. Sometimes history remembers the picture, but we must never forget the people behind it. Chapter 5. The Aftermath. The day after the crash, Paris woke up to a surreal sight, a 17-ton locomotive dangling from a hole in the Gare Montparnasse wall, as if defying gravity by sheer stubbornness. The crowds returned, not out of fear this time, but fascination. Some came to gawk, others to mourn, all came to make sense of the impossible. Cleanup was no small feat. Workers spent days carefully rigging up cranes and pulleys to lift the fallen engine, an effort as precarious as it was impressive. Inch by inch, the steel monster was winched back onto solid ground, its once proud frame battered, bent and humiliated. The French newspapers went wild. Illustrations and dramatic headlines filled the pages. La catastrophe du Montparnasse, the train that defied the station. Some painted it as a modern marvel gone rogue, others as a cautionary tale of human error. As investigations rolled in, blame had to fall somewhere. Engineer Guillaume-Marie Pellerin, under pressure to make up for lost time, had entered the station at excessive speed. He claimed the air brakes failed, but officials believed he hadn't applied them early enough. Pellerin was fined 50 francs, a slap on the wrist by modern standards but symbolic nonetheless. The station master also faced a 25-franc fine for not ensuring proper safety measures were in place. The public was torn between ridicule and outrage. Some laughed at the absurdity, others pointed fingers at the rail company, the crew, and the system that prized punctuality over prudence. In the court of public opinion, Progress had overshot its platform, and Paris wouldn't forget it anytime soon. Over a century later, we still look at that photo and feel something, a mix of awe, horror, and reflection. Because sometimes history doesn't just derail, it crashes through the walls. If you're still here, you're one of us, the curious, the thoughtful, the seekers of hidden history. This is the Griot Chronicles. Subscribe, like and support the channel so we can keep bringing you the stories that shook the world, changed the course of time, and remind us what it means to be human.